Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy, and I'm 23 years old. 3 years ago, my family laughed when I started mowing other people's lawns for money. My older brother Butler said I was embarrassing our family. My father told me to stop wasting my time and get a real job. They thought I was cutting grass. They had no idea I was building my future. This is my story. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood outside Dallas, Texas. My father owned a small construction company. Since I was a child, everyone assumed I would one day work beside him. My older brother Butler did exactly that. He loved construction. He loved machines. He loved working with his hands. My father couldn't have been prouder. But I wanted something different. I dreamed of building a business of my own. I didn't care how small it started. I just wanted something I could call mine. Every morning, Butler and my father left together before sunrise. They laughed. They planned jobs. They talked about the future of the company. I stayed behind. Whenever I mentioned starting my own business, my father would shake his head. Jimmy, stop chasing dreams. Join the family business. But my heart wasn't there. I wanted to prove that success didn't have to look the same for everyone. One Saturday morning, I found an old used lawnmower for sale. It was rusty. It wasn't pretty, but it still worked. I spent almost all the money I had saved to buy it. When I brought it home, Butler started laughing. You really think cutting grass is going to make you successful? Even my father smiled. You'll be back asking for a job in a month. I didn't argue. I simply wheeled the mower into the garage. The next morning, I printed simple flyers. Lawn mowing, affordable, reliable, Jimmy. I walked from house to house. Most people said no. Some didn't even answer the door. After hours of walking, one elderly woman smiled and said, my lawn needs cutting. How much? It wasn't a big job, but to me, it felt like the biggest opportunity in the world. I spent 3 hours making her yard look perfect. When I finished, she smiled and said, you're the hardest working young man I've met in years. She even tipped me an extra $20. That night, I couldn't stop smiling. A few days later, the elderly woman recommended me to her neighbors. Then another customer called, then another. Soon my weekends were fully booked. I wasn't making a fortune, but I was earning every dollar honestly. At dinner, Butler joked, so how many lawns did you cut today? Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because I knew something they didn't. Every customer was another step toward my dream. Not every week was easy. Sometimes it rained for days. Customers canceled appointments. Money became tight. There were nights when I wondered if my father had been right. But every difficult day reminded me why I had started. Dreams aren't tested on easy days. They're tested when everything goes wrong. I started waking up at 5 a.m. I cleaned my equipment, answered customer calls, planned my routes, worked until sunset. Some days I was exhausted. My hands hurt. My clothes were covered in grass. But every evening, I looked at the money I had earned myself, and I felt proud. One afternoon, a manager from a local office building stopped me while I was working. Do you only mow residential lawns? He asked. I smiled. I can do commercial properties too. He handed me his business card. Call me tomorrow. That single conversation could change everything. Butler heard about the commercial contract. He laughed. You won't handle a job that big. For a moment, I doubted myself. Then I remembered my first customer. She had believed in me before anyone else did. I accepted the contract. I promised myself I wouldn't let fear decide my future. The first commercial job wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I learned. I improved. By the end of the month, the manager signed me for a full-year contract. Standing beside my old lawnmower, I smiled. 3 months earlier, everyone had laughed at me. Now, the same business they mocked had become my future. The commercial contract changed everything. It wasn't just one job anymore. Soon, other business owners started calling me. Restaurants, medical offices, small shopping centers. They all wanted someone reliable. For the first time, I couldn't handle every job by myself. So I hired a local high school student who was looking for a summer job. A few weeks later, I hired another. Standing beside my old lawnmower, I looked at my small team and smiled. I wasn't just cutting grass anymore. I was building a company. While my business was growing, things at home were changing. The construction industry slowed down. Several important projects were canceled. The family business began losing money. My father looked more worried every day. Even Butler wasn't smiling anymore. One evening, he quietly said, I never thought business could get this hard. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. One afternoon, my father called me. His voice sounded different. Not proud, not angry, just tired. Jimmy, I need to ask you something. When I arrived at his office, the silence said everything. The company was struggling. Bills were piling up. Instead of reminding them how they had laughed at me, I opened my laptop. I helped organize their finances, reduce unnecessary costs, and find new local clients. I wasn't helping because they had believed in me. I was helping because they were my family. That day I learned something. Success means very little if you can't use it to lift the people you love. A few days later, Butler asked me to meet him after work. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me and said, Jimmy, I owe you an apology. I laughed at your business because I didn't understand it. I thought mowing lawns was something people did when they had no future. I was wrong. I smiled. We all judge things we don't understand. He held out his hand, but instead of shaking it, I gave him a hug. For the first time in years, we weren't competing. We were brothers again. Just as everything seemed to be falling into place, I received a phone call. A large property management company wanted someone to maintain dozens of residential communities across the city. It was the biggest contract I had ever seen. If I accepted it, my company would double in size. But it also meant taking a huge risk. That night, I stood in my garage looking at the same old lawnmower that had started it all. I smiled and whispered, "You've brought me this far. Let's take one more chance." The next morning, I signed the contract. 6 months later, our trucks were driving across the city every single day. We had a growing team, loyal customers, and more work than I had ever imagined. One Saturday morning, my father stood quietly watching my employees load their equipment. After a long silence, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Jimmy, when you first brought home that old lawnmower, I thought you were throwing your life away." He smiled. I wasn't watching a boy cut grass. I was watching a young man build a future, and I couldn't be prouder. I looked at my father, then at Butler, and finally at the company I had built from nothing. 3 years earlier, they had laughed at my dream. Now, they believed in it just as much as I did. The problems didn't last forever. My team worked harder than ever. We fixed our mistakes. We earned our customers' trust again. A few months later, we signed even more contracts. The company was stronger than before. Sometimes success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about refusing to stay down. One evening, Butler came to my office. He looked around at the trucks, the employees, and the busy schedule. Then he smiled. "I used to laugh at this business. Now I admire it." That meant more to me than he could ever imagine. For the first time, we weren't competing. We were supporting each other. A local newspaper wrote a story about my company. The headline read, "Young entrepreneur builds one of the fastest growing lawn care businesses in Texas." My father clipped the article and framed it. When visitors came to our house, he proudly said, "That's my son, Jimmy." Hearing those words healed years of doubt. Sometimes people ask me what the secret to my success was. It wasn't luck. It wasn't money. It was showing up every day, even when nobody believed in me. The same old lawnmower they laughed at became the foundation of everything I built. My name is Jimmy. And if there's one lesson my journey taught me, it's this. Never let someone else's opinion become the limit of your future, because the dream people laugh at today may become the success they admire tomorrow.